Hello, everybody. This is the press conference of Lori Bell Daybell. This is courtesy of ABC 15 Arizona. Let's go.
I'm ready to move on. It's time. We've got a 10-year-old granddaughter we're raising now, and I've got my hands full, and I'm real happy to be being her grandma. So
after 6 years, does it feel real after 6 long years of walking from hell, as you mentioned?
yes, it feels real because for about 3 years I didn't feel anything. I was totally just didn't feel anything. Numb. Then I
Does this
started.
feel like justice for Charles? Is this?
Yes, and the order in which it's happened. You know, this was the first incident, the first murder, and then everything up in Idaho, and then so Charles would have wanted, take care of Tammy and the kids first, and get to me when they're ready. And so he would have been. He's fine, I know that he's pleased with us, and excuse me, there's a bug. I know he's pleased with us, and I feel, I feel good.
We wanted to tell us that your testimony stuck with them, and they even saw you after and felt like there was justice for your brother. What does that mean to hear that?
Great. Whatever I said, I struck a chord, and that's what I wanted to do. That's what I was trying to do, and I'm grateful. I mean, hey, the Lord put this, gave us. Well, this was thrust upon us, and our lives just went into like a tornado for a long time, and then getting to say things in the first two trials, and then getting to speak about Charles finally, because he's been so silent. And I mean, it's just been silent where he's at. I know people thought we forgot about him, and no way, and but law enforcement never stopped. Like Lori said, they didn't stop because I was right there behind with law enforcement here in Arizona, talking and saying, "What's going on now? Tell me." I was in contact with them nonstop, so I knew at some point, it was going to happen, and then all the other stuff, and just. I'm just glad we got to. I'm just glad this is done. Now we just have to get justice for Brandon, and I will be back. I can't stay the whole time for his, but I will stay as long as I can. Kind of more towards the end of it, I guess, and because then it will truly be over. I say I've still got a little bit left before I close my book. But
Sorry about the ads.
As they were walking out, did you notice that at all?
no, I didn't. I watched them walk in because I know that if they look at you when they're walking in, that's a good sign. And nobody looked at me, but I didn't see. So I didn't watch them walk out. I didn't think to look. So
What'd you think
good.
when Lori went affirmation? What'd you think?
I really couldn't hear her because that baby talk she does, that baby voice.
Yep.
She needs to lose that, man. But I hope she grows up in prison and learns how to talk like a woman, and not a baby. But anyway,
One of the jurors, the woman with the long hair, she said that she really just wanted to give you a hug. It's like, afterwards, I really just wanted to give her a hug.
in Idaho, all the jurors I've met from up there, from both trials there, that was the one thing they were like, I just wanted to hug you. I just wanted to hug you. So I hope I get to meet her. I hope she reaches out to me. Nate, if anybody calls you, give them my number. And just make sure they're a real juror. And yeah, I want to talk to them. Absolutely.
I was thinking, I'm wondering if there's anything you can say to Lori at this point.
got you, and you're not the smartest person in the room, and now it's time for you just to hide away and, well, after Brandon's trial, but you can just hide away and everybody's going to forget about you. We'll be on our way through our life and she'll be rotting in prison where she deserves to be.
And like Charles always used to say, love always wins.
Yeah,
So.
and oh yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, love always wins was Charles's thing, and yeah, so it does.
This is a family tragedy.
That is absurd. That was.
When you heard that mantra over and over again.
And calling Charles my husband, whom she was hated at the time, whom she was ready to kill him. You know, it's like, that just shows you what she's an actress. She turns on this persona and goes with it, and then boom, she turns it off, and then there's the real her, whatever the real her is. I sure never knew her.
Tell us a little bit, just for me, about Charles. You know, let's bring it back to him and his legacy.
Hey, you want to take that one?
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
If you could just
Tell
tell us a
them
little
about
bit about Charles, his legacy, and how you want us to think about him.
He was my big brother, you know. I followed in his footsteps. I did everything he did. He was only a year and 2 months older than me. So we hung around a lot. We had a lot of the same friends. He was a big influence in my life. And he was just a good dude. He was, all the way from a kid till when she killed him. So, you know.
What did it mean to hug Trina Kay at the end? What did that feel like? To hear the verdict and then give her a hug?
Well, I hugged her and told her I loved her because she did such a great job. And it felt good. It did.
And she did do a great job. And all the detectives and everybody that has worked on this case, from Nicole Meyer to she's our victim advocate, and Trina and Nate Duncan and all the detectives that have come, and even we had a few visitors from Idaho that came, and that was welcome. And I got a thank you from, not a thank you, I got a congratulations from Rob Wood, from the prosecutor in Idaho a while ago, and we have gained, we lost some dear family, we lost a lot, but we have gained family as well. So, you know, there's the silver lining, and even in the worst times of your life, there is something good there. It just takes sometimes a little while to find it. But y'all, we're dying here.
And so,
Susan, do you want
Lauren?
to say anything? No, she doesn't want to.
and as a parting shot, they got the bitch again. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, dear. Thank y'all.
Okay, so you have been listening to some of the
Damn, they had News Nation there?
Their emotions
I didn't even know News
the,
Nation was even
conviction
there.
Of Lori Daybell here at Maricopa County is Superior Court. One of the family members saying it's been 6 years walking the pits of hell to get to this point, saying if they could say anything to Lori Daybell right now, they'd say, "We got you, and you are not the smartest person in the room." That Charles Vallow, her fourth husband, that she was just convicted of conspiring to murder, used to always say is that love always wins, and they said that is the emotion that they are feeling following this jury's decision. Got 24 hours of deliberation on the part of the jury. They got the case very late yesterday. They sort of wrapped generally the court about 4:30 in the afternoon. They got the case around 3:30, met briefly, decided to pick it up again this morning, started deliberating this morning around 10:30 in the morning, broke for a brief lunch, and then came back this afternoon and announced they did in fact have a verdict. And that is what got us to this point. Javier, our Ashley Holden, was in the middle of the scrum you just saw with the family members. We're going to talk to her shortly and get a debrief on everything that she heard from them one more time. But for now, I'll send it back to you in studio.
Yeah, it stood out to me, as you mentioned, that the younger brother said that Charles Vallow used to always say, love always wins, and the family sharing that sentiment that today they won. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. We'll have much more.
Well,
Hi guys, welcome back to our stream coverage. I'm Lillian Donahue. We've been kind of holding down the fort on the stream for all of this, but as you have been watching, Lori Daybell has been convicted of conspiracy to murder her former husband, Charles Vallow. You were hearing from Vallow's family members. You heard from some jurors as well, and they read that obviously the verdict just recently. So, I want to actually toss to the verdict if we can and see those final moments as they were shown in court. Maybe we can pull that up here just for a second.
Arizona versus Lori Daybell. CR 2021-001704-001. Verdict, count 1. We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled actions upon our oaths, do find the defendant, Lori Daybell, as to the crime of count 1, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder occurring on or about July 11, 2019, guilty.
And there you go. You can hear that happening. I also want to bring back our Benjamin Taylor. He's been an incredible guest with us throughout this whole thing, helping us put things into context. You've had experience in murder cases and trials like this. Hearing that guilty verdict, what are you thinking right now after just 2 weeks we've been talking?
This was a very quick verdict, which we kind of expected. The jurors came back this morning, they had lunch, they came back this afternoon, so they must have just talked about a few things. They probably didn't go through every single piece of evidence. I mean, they might have skimmed through a lot of things, but I'm pretty sure the jurors probably already knew after sitting there for the past couple of weeks what their verdict was going to be. They probably just want to confirm, discuss a little bit, but the shock, there wasn't really much of a shock there, but I'm sure Lori Daybell, she might have been shocked, but or maybe she wasn't. She didn't really put on any evidence, didn't testify, didn't really put on much of a defense throughout this whole case.
And Ben, just in the past, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, as we've been watching all of this unfold, especially outside of the courthouse as people leave, jurors leave, one of the jurors that they interviewed outside said that he was on the fence until yesterday. Until closing arguments. We talked about this yesterday, that it was very possible that somebody was still on the fence because they had to, the prosecution had to, beyond a reasonable doubt, find her guilty of conspiracy. And conspiracy is difficult to prove if you don't have a smoking gun, text or call, or things saying, time to do this now. But he said that all of the evidence eventually did make sense. And in that jury deliberation, they talked as adults and they came to that conclusion looking at the prosecution's argument, and even more so looking at a lack of an argument, the lack of a defense from Daybell. I mean, just talk about how important that was. Honestly, I think Daybell not having a defense was exactly what prosecution needed and wanted for this.
Yes, she representing herself, she not having a defense. And Lillian, like you said, that juror who is still in the holdout the last few minutes or to the last day, that's very surprising. So that shows you that she must have done something in order for that one juror to have doubt. So if Lori Daybell would have still stuck with that juror, maybe looking that juror in the eye and still focused on that juror, we might have had a hung jury based upon that one juror, because under the law, the prosecutor has to have unanimous, meaning all 12 jurors have to decide and say guilty. But it sounds like, based upon your interview with that one juror, that juror was still kind of on the fence, which that could have been the holdout juror that Lori Daybell needed. But as you see, that juror didn't decide and came back with the rest of the group with the rest of the 12.
And it's fascinating to put a face to the name of the person that I've been thinking about all day today. Is like, oh, who's that one person? Well, we met him and we talked to him and we talked to another woman that was also on the jury and what she was thinking about. She said that she just wanted to give Kay Woodcock, Charles Vallow's sister, a hug. Something else I was also watching is I was watching Colby Ryan's stream. He was streaming on YouTube and as this verdict went, and Colby Ryan is Lori Daybell's son, adult son. He's been very active in talking about all of this, and he said in his words that it's just been a long time coming, and the biggest sense right now is relief. And we heard that again from the family members, is the same word, that relief that is coming after a trial like this. How do you feel like, do you feel like that is shared amongst everybody in that courtroom? I mean, obviously not for Daybell, but for the others sitting there, when you're done with a murder case, what is the feeling like while you're walking out in your experience?
Yeah, so I represented victims and I represented defendants both. But no matter who you represent, after a long week of trial or 2 or 3 weeks of trial, you are exhausted. Yes, you do feel relief. Waiting for that verdict, your gut is just twisting because you have no idea what these jurors are going to say or do. And the jurors can do whatever they want. So this could have come back today and we've been very surprised but not guilty. So doing these trials, it is very gut-wrenching. And you have to remember, this case is not just 3 weeks. This case has been going on for years. So as an attorney, you're preparing for years and years of evidence, reading legal briefs, going through police reports, going through body camera footage, going through autopsies. So it's a lot of work. So to finally get to today, this day, I'm sure it's a lot of relief for the victims' families to know that Lori Daybell was found guilty.
Not just a relief for the victims' families and the prosecution, but also a relief for those jurors who've had a big weight on their shoulders and a big decision. Ben, we're going to take a quick pause with you, and I want to actually toss to that full interview that we got live on air. You saw it on ABC 15, talking to 2 of those jurors about what was going through their heads over the past 24 hours.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I don't get
Or why she didn't have, like, I know she made the family that was interviewed was her estranged brother, and why wasn't her parents or her sister, but yet she didn't call them. So,
I mean, in saying that, she is not obligated to prove her innocence.
exactly, yeah.
And you gave her that benefit of the doubt. She would recognize she didn't have to put it. She just
Right.
Was the fact that she didn't put up a defense or take the stand in her own defense part of your deliberation at all?
It was all evidence. It was all evidence that was produced and presented to us.
Sorry if this was asked, what would you say the biggest piece of evidence for you guys as a jury was when you came to the decision?
Well, for me, like her, it was tips.
The text
with
history.
What's specific about the test?
Oh, there were so many. I mean, we had pages.
That really stood out.
Can you tell us which ones?
The Nephi.
Yeah, that was one of them. Soon you will be Nephi and Solai. So that was one of them. But I don't know if I should say anything more than
We
that.
heard so much about dark spirits and religion and how this all plays into it. I mean, as a jury, what's going through your head when you start hearing that in court?
For me, that didn't really play a big role because we have to have evidence of conspiracy, and that is not evidence of conspiracy to me. To say somebody is
Was it an essential for you guys to, I mean, you're talking about her brother Alex, the guy who actually did the trigger, was the trigger, but somebody playing reference to the trial, and you never saw them, you never heard from them. It had to be confusing when
It was
you got
very
back in the
confusing.
jury room. Yeah?
Yeah, it was very confusing.
What-
It just felt like there was so much of the story that was missing.
Arguments, like anything that made you think maybe she's not guilty?
Do you want to answer? I can't think of any.
You know, honestly, up until yesterday, I would have said not guilty. But when the prosecutor, I don't know what they call it, give their
was in that house that day, minus Daybell, is all not with us anymore. Is dead or has been killed. I mean, what is that like to hear as jurors walking out?
Sad. Like I kept wanting to hear from Tylee.
I was going to ask, is anybody wondering why Tylee wasn't testifying?
Yes.
Did you ever ask the judge why aren't they here?
No. And the one witness that really got to me was hearing Kay. I was holding back my emotions.
That's a powerful sound there. Ben, tell me, what's your thoughts listening to that?
Well, I heard Ashley Holden, one of your ABC 15 reporters, ask the question, how does it feel knowing that pretty much Lori Daybell's kids are not alive? And they were very, heartbroken. They were shocked because the viewers should know that the jurors don't know all of the story. The reason why it is that is the judge makes sure that they want to have a fair trial. But you don't hear about the Idaho facts or Idaho case, this case, and the facts that you hear about this case. So the jurors, like you hear that one juror, the male juror was like, he was on the fence. I mean, he almost said that guilty.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of funny to me because it's like, a lot of the people, I think we know more because we've been following this trial for many years. We have to realize these jurors, they pick juror members who don't really know anything about this case, who only know about what they hear for the past couple of weeks. So this juror was on the fence. So that shocks me that this juror might have been, he said himself, that could have been a not guilty juror. And the female juror was saying the same thing, like she wished she had heard more. And that's interesting because I think that's what we viewers, we know a lot more than what actually in the courtroom. And Lillian, we're talking about this too. All it takes is one or even two jurors to hold out. And we were wondering, wait, why is it taking so long? And because of those two jurors, or even other jurors were even taking that guilty. So that's very amazing to me. So that tells me that the foreperson or the other jurors must have twisted some arms in that room to get them on to their side to say, hey, look at this evidence. We believe that she's guilty. And that guy, he heard him from his own words, the juror, heard and changed his own mind.
And at the end of the day, Ben, it comes down to, did the prosecution take all of the puzzle pieces of circumstantial evidence and actually create that picture that they were trying to create? Without the smoking gun, how do you paint that picture? How do you accurately show what happened without it? And they were saying that for them, at least that female juror, she said that her smoking gun or what was the most powerful for her were those text messages, were the words herself. And we were hearing that from many analysts, even including yourself, like that they would be relying on her and Lori Daybell digging her own grave in this one. And they talked about even the lack of information. Why is there not information? Why is she not taking the stand? I heard from the former prosecutor up in Idaho, and she told us she didn't think she was going to take the stand. She didn't think Lori was going to take the stand because if she took the stand, then she was going to be putting herself in a place where she could potentially get asked questions where that information would be potentially leaked, or not leaked, but if she said something on that stand, unfortunately, if she said something that said, she didn't plead the fifth left and right, it's very fascinating, and looking at all of it, Ben, what would you say makes this case so interesting, fascinating? Why do you care to pay attention to something like this?
It's a fascinating case because of all the religious factors, all the factors that you have multiple people who are dead. And there's still another case coming up in Arizona within a month from now. So I think people are glued to their TV sets because how in the world did Lori Daybell orchestrate all this to have all these people murdered? One person orchestrated this to have all her family members. And then she had multiple husbands. I think she had like 4 or 5 husbands she's had, and some of them, some of them have died, as we see. versus Charles. So it's just amazing how she's orchestrated all of this and she's representing herself. So I think representing herself is one of those things that people are like, what in the world is she doing? And it's just very sensationalized of how she presents. So I think that's why people are glued to the TV set and wanting more of this case.
It's certainly been a very fascinating one, an interesting one to hear. A very solid presentation by the state. I mean, their closing arguments were 1 hour 45 minutes, and they laid it all out. They brought back evidence with all of that, and we know there's foreshadowing here. Brandon Boudreaux was in that courtroom today when they read that guilty verdict. And so for those who are just joining our stream, just to kind of catch everybody up on this, this is the Lori Daybell case we've been covering for a long time. I mean, this whole saga started almost 6 years ago, where the state said that Lori Daybell had a role to play in agreement with her brother, Alex Cox, to shoot and kill, to murder her former husband, Charles Vallow. And so as they went through this whole case, as they presented all the evidence, they brought up text messages and emails and phone pings and surveillance video of her getting stuff at Burger King. I mean, they went to such a detail with everything. And they had well over 12, I think they had well over a dozen witnesses come up to the stand, including friends and family members. And then you had insurance agents coming up and detectives coming up, all leading to that final moment. And I think we can play that one more time. I think it's definitely fair to...
Don't settle for boring. Design memorable t-shirts online.
Sorry about that.
That up and go back into the courtroom.
State of Arizona versus Lori Daybell. CR 2021-001704-001. Verdict, count 1. We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled action, upon our oaths, do find the defendant, Lori Daybell, as to the crime of count 1, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder occurring on or about July 11, 2019, guilty.
So now you've heard that. You've heard the guilty. You've heard it. And we've done plenty of analysis after that. But in seeing this whole case play out, what would you say was the hardest thing Daybell was facing? Was it the prosecution or was it her own self?
Lily, that's a great question. It's a little bit of both. I mean, the prosecution is the one who's bringing the evidence against her, so she has tons of evidence she's bringing against her. But Lori Daybell dug her own grave too by being her own attorney, and that really knowing the law, and that really, taking the prosecutors serious. However, I'm still kind of going back to the jurors. I mean, the fact that she still had a couple of jurors in that jury room, still kind of figuring out what's going on, that tells you that even though she represented herself, she must have put in some piece of doubt in their head. And I know her whole defense was, you didn't see me, you didn't hear me. So she had some jurors confused here. So, I mean, this could have been the other way. It would really shocking if it was a not guilty across the board, but it sounds like there were some jurors in the jury room who were disgusting and still confused. So I know she didn't do a great job defending herself. However, she looked like she almost convinced a couple of jurors there to help her out.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that too, how close it got to that. But they did end up making that decision decently quickly. I mean, they had only 17 minutes yesterday, and then they came back at 10:30. They had an hour and a half break, so only a few hours of true deliberation there, and it didn't take too much for them to twist the arm. But we know that this is her first of second trials that she has here, so she already has conviction here in Maricopa County. She'll have another trial to face, and that's going to be in the case of Brandon Boudreaux, who is her niece's ex-husband. It is another conspiracy to commit murder case, so saying that she tried to conspire to kill him
as well. Do you think that anything that played out here is going to impact either how she brings herself to court or how the next trial works?
Yes, the interesting fact is that Brandon Bordeaux, he's actually in the courtroom, and he's been watching this case, and he's a victim, and then his case is coming up. So I think he's gonna be ready. I mean, he's gonna be ready. He sees how Lori Daybell has cross-examined, so if he takes a stand himself, which he probably will in his own case as a victim. He knows how she's going to present evidence. So it'll be interesting to see if she decides whether or not she wants to get an attorney for her next case, or will she continue to represent herself? Because if she represents herself, it'd probably be the same sort of verdict we're seeing right now. But she might change her mind and say, hey, I want an attorney, and then that will definitely play into the factor of whether or not we go to trial within the next month or so.
Right, and the big question that I keep seeing pop up left and right on comments, and just I've heard even from friends talking about this. Well, she's already been convicted. She's already been convicted up in Idaho. She was already convicted of killing her 2 children. I mean, this is a very well-known case. Why even try? And we heard from family today, from Charles Vallow's family, about why. It's for them. It's for Charles Vallow. And even though she's currently serving 3 life sentences, she's not getting out of prison. For the family members, it's that level of justice to say that we took her to court for the conspiracy to commit murder for our brother. Is what Kay Woodcock and them said. So we are definitely going to continue working on this. Any final wraps, Ben, that you want to say that you think people really should take away from this before we cut you loose?
I mean, one final wrap is, if you ever facing charges, never represent yourself. Never ever represent yourself. And that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give as an attorney. I mean, this is an interesting case, and we're going to see. I mean, it continues. So never represent yourself. I think the prosecution didn't bring a lot of evidence. Lori Daybell tried her best here. She had a couple of jurors confused, but at the end of the day, Lillian, as you saw, as you said, she was found guilty. So those arms are twisted, and then she was found guilty.
Ben Taylor, thank you so much. Amazing local attorney here, and thank you for all of your analysis throughout everything. And we can let you hop off now. So kind of bringing us back in here, she's been convicted, Lori Daybell convicted of conspiracy to commit murder for Charles Vallow. And we were talking about just this whole trial, how the prosecution had to bring in all of these different puzzle pieces to create this picture without this big smoking gun of her flat out saying, yes, I worked with my brother to do this. They had to bring all of that circumstantial evidence in, whether it was financial, whether it was religious based, or it was, her worried about some sort of intervention, just all of these different things that we were hearing throughout the case. But we do have a clip of all of the highlights, right? So not everything for over the past 2.5 weeks, but we have a highlight reel just to show a flavor of what it looked like. And the things you're going to see in this highlight reel is you're going to see Kay Woodcock, you're going to see the sister of Charles Vallow as she took the stand, you're going to see multiple detectives as they're discussing things. It's not super long, but it just gives the flavor of that back and forth that you saw throughout the past 2 weeks with Daybell as she was acting as her own attorney. Let's see if we can bring that up now.
Family tragedy is not a crime. Lori and Alex knew exactly when this murder would happen and where it would happen. Did you see or hear or personally?
I'm going to go to Hidden True Crime to see what they have. Okay, she may have ended hers. She may have ended hers. Hold on, y'all. See who all is still talking. see what we have here. Okay, here we are. She on a brand new live, looks like. Okay, maybe not, I'm not sure. Okay, I go somewhere else. 1 second, y'all, 1 second. I thought I saw ABC News, but I'm not sure. Let me go back to where I was. See if it's, there we go. Go back to Arizona 15.
The 1-2 punch. The next day, they brought in the medical examiner and they said, hey, based on the autopsy, do you also agree with what the first responder said on scene, that the second shot was on the ground? And the medical examiner said yes, it was something called a shore wound. So a shore wound means that when something goes in, it's the person is against a hard surface. And they believe that hard surface was the ground. They even had a part of the floor that had that. And so they relied on that, saying to dismiss the whole claim of it was just a family tragedy, it was a horrible act of self-defense, even if Daybell didn't agree with what her brother did in self-defense, that it was still a tragedy. And that is what prosecution came back with and said, no, here's the physical evidence that can show that why would you need to shoot Vallow a second time while he's already on the ground laying there. And another thing that they talked about was Nephi and these texts from her saying that I need to be close. Daybell was texting her brother back and forth saying, I'm going to be like Nephi and you are going to be like Nephi. And in her faith, Nephi represented what the prosecution called a justified killing. And so, like I've been saying, it's not her exactly directly saying that we're going to do it at this time. Here's how we're going to conspire to kill Vallow. But it is, I mean, it's as close as you can get from a perspective of somebody writing code, writing a religious code almost. But she also, Lori Daybell, when she was doing cross-examination, tried to poke some holes into that. And her poking holes were basically saying, well, do you really know what that means? And the detective's like, well, I haven't asked you. And she didn't take the stand to answer those questions. So there were a lot of things that weren't brought to the table that jurors couldn't look at. They couldn't really pay attention to that cross-examination. They could, but they couldn't pay attention to what was not said, if that makes sense. And that's what that juror was talking about in the interview right after the verdict was read, was she wanted to hear more. She wanted to hear a defense. She wanted to hear Lori defend herself and answer questions, but that wasn't there. And they couldn't look at that or talk about that. And so we have about a minute, a clip that we've been able to clip from Kay Woodcock, that's the sister of Charles Vallow. And remember, just after the verdict, they came outside, they talked to reporters, they said they have a huge sense of relief and justice. And the big question for here was, why have the trial here? And for this family is the reason why. So let's see if we can pull that up with Kay Woodcock talking after the verdict.
I really couldn't hear her because, you know, that baby talk she does, that baby voice. Yep. She needs to lose that. We got you, and you're not the smartest person in the room, and now it's time for you just to hide away and, well, after Brandon's trial, but you can just hide away and everybody's going to forget about you. We'll be on our way through our life, and she'll be rotting in prison. Idaho, all the jurors I've met from up there, from both trials there, that was the one thing they were like, I just wanted to hug you. I just wanted to hug you. So I hope I get to meet her. I hope she reaches out to me. Nate, if anybody calls you, give them my number. And just make sure they're a real juror.
And there you have it. That's from Kay Woodcock. She took the stand early on, and it was a very powerful testimony when she was talking about her brother and talking about how it has impacted her family not having him in her life, and it also talking about, though, you know, how she truly believed in her gut that Lori Daybell was guilty, that she, although she did not directly see that physical evidence of, I know exactly what you did, I know exactly that you conspired with your brother to kill my brother, she still said on the stand that all of the evidence so far points directly to that. And then you see today her finally having that final say, her and her brother being able to talk about Charles Vallow, about who he was, but then also about their thoughts as they were sitting in the courtroom and as they were watching Lori Daybell represent herself throughout this whole time. And going back to that juror, you know, as she was talking on the stand during this trial, we couldn't see the jury, so we wouldn't know. But I assume, and based on what we've heard from some of the jurors finally, is that it was extremely emotional for them. And that one of the jurors that we spoke to said they wanted to give her a hug. They just wanted to go up to the family and let them know. But obviously you can't do that. You have to let justice play out. And that is what has happened in this case, is that justice has played out. And then, you know, let's talk about things here, right? So next steps, you have the guilty verdict. And then you have, you know, prosecution celebrating, you have family celebrating, you have all of this happening. But don't forget, this is the first of 2 trials in Arizona. So this is not over. This one's over, but not the next one. And the next one is for a charge of conspiring to murder Brandon Boudreaux. That's the ex-husband of Daybell's niece. And so that's going to be fascinating as well, because that's kind of a lesser known, not as high profile. I really am interested to see the evidence that comes out about that conspiracy, and to see if there are any questions or thoughts, and see how this might impact that case. Granted, though, the jurors have to be impartial, so you can't have jurors that have, you know, are the true crime buffs that have been following this and know exactly every single conviction and what has happened. So we'll definitely be able to see that. But that is the next step, is going to be to see what happens in the second case here in Arizona, to see what she does. If Lori Daybell represents herself, if she asks for a lawyer, all of that's to be seen in the future. Certainly we heard the smart analyst has nothing to lose. She's already serving 3 life sentences and has just been convicted of another conspiracy for murder. But walking us through, trying to tie a bow on all of this, is this whole trial has been something that was for Charles Vallow's family, was for the justice that they say he deserved, and it was fascinating to watch Lori Daybell, represent herself. It was fascinating to see the prosecution lay out their argument in a way that would make sense to an everyday person who has never heard about Lori Daybell before, and bring all of those puzzle pieces together to make a full picture. And eventually that picture came to be a verdict of guilt. But there was 1 to 2 jurors, as we heard from the jury. There was at least one that was on the fence all the way up until closing arguments. And that just shows how important every single moment in court is, and every single step, process, and opportunity is to a jury. So I just want to thank you guys for following along with this, and and our Ashley Holden is also doing a great job with Arizona Crime Uncovered. So we want to thank you guys for being a part of this, and feel free, send us questions and things that you want to see addressed, especially as well. So talking about Daybell, wrapping up on Daybell, she's going to be obviously they're going to be going into that next trial as well, and we will be doing that too. So Arizona Crime Uncovered will be live tomorrow with Ashley. She's going to wrap this trial. She's going to talk about this trial again. I hope you guys tune in for that as well, because she is doing such a good job on that show, and we will hope to see you tomorrow for Arizona Crime Uncovered. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Arizona versus Lori Daybell, CR 2021-001704-001, verdict count 1. We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled actions, upon our oaths, do find the defendant, Lori Daybell, as to the crime of count 1, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder occurring on or about July 11, 2019, guilty.
Well, that's it.